everybody, this is Alex from Reportify Media, and you know who this guy is. He's Cyrus Jansen. Buddy,
Alex, good to meet you, buddy. Good to see you again.
We are in the clouds here at the beautiful Nicola Hotel here in Chongqing, 62 stories above the skyline here in the wonderful city. Cyrus, welcome to my city.
You know, Alex, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've heard so much about Chongqing over the last few years, and this is something that we've talked about for a long time, and really trying to help put Chongqing on the map because, you know, I've kind of fallen in love with Chongqing just through your vlogs.
Thank you.
And you've done an amazing job over the past few years really putting this city on the map. I've seen a lot of viral videos, and I have to be honest, I mean, I've traveled to a lot of cities around the world. I've been to a lot of cities in China. I've never seen anything quite like Chongqing.
I mean, first impressions of the city?
To me, it is really a very unique city because of the way of the land, right? Because I was exploring the downtown today, and you have this amazing peninsula with two rivers that are on both sides. And what was incredible as well is that there is so much steep terrain. The old town that I was exploring today, you have all of these old village houses that are built, and by the time you start at the top and descend down to the bottom, I mean, you've probably gone about 500 feet down the side of a mountain. So that's very unique in that regard. And, you know, just the skyline, we had an afternoon where we walked across the bridge. We took the pedestrian walk across the bridge, and that was phenomenal. I mean, that is some of the most picturesque skyline views that you can probably find in the world. So, I mean, this is, I've only been here for 24 hours so far, but first impressions are, wow, this is a mega city, and this has really surprised me.
Isn't it great that now this market has finally opened up? The travel market is finally getting into second gear here. You're in Chongqing. How are things on the other side of the waters here in North America?
You know, I want to just talk on that travel thing because one of the things that's really interesting, what we saw, Alex, is we've seen the amount of foreign tourists coming to China increase by 305%.
That's a big number.
First quarter of 2024 as compared to Q1 of 2023.
Right.
So, you know, what I'm really seeing here on the ground in China is that we've seen a lot more European countries have now opened up to be visa-free.
Right.
In the last couple of days, we've had New Zealand, we've had Australia now come in with visa-free options. So the amazing thing here is that there's more foreigners coming back to China, even from a North American perspective. You asked me about North America. What's really interesting is we're seeing a lot of North American business leaders also coming back to China, and they stayed away for a while during COVID. But they have come back to China as well because, again, you know, China is so integral to the United States economy, to the North American, to the European economy. As far as, you know, on the other side of the pond, I think there's a lot of work to do to try to help people understand a little bit more about China. And that's really, you know, one of the missions on why I've come back to China this summer. I'm here on a 6-week trip with my family. Happy to be here in Chongqing as well because I think there's a lot that people really need to understand and see here.
I agree with you. And I think yesterday you took the Highspeed Rail up from Guangzhou, 6 hours. And how was the journey on the way up through to the city here?
I think what's so much fun about China is that you can travel very conveniently on the high-speed rail.
Right.
And that's something that, just different culture, right? In America, we don't.
You had options. You could have taken a plane, right?
I could have taken a plane, and my wife actually told me, hey, why don't you just take a plane? But I actually prefer the trains because you leave from downtown and you go to downtown. You can show up 5 minutes before, walk right onto the train. It's very convenient. So you get a first-class seat, very spacious. I could, you know, relax my legs. You have Wi-Fi on the train. It's a very pleasurable time. And you can go literally from tip to tip, north to south, west to east, and everywhere in between on the high-speed rail. So you have options. It's something that China's government is certainly committed to. And one of my favorite things is just looking at the beautiful scenery, the countryside of China, absolutely gorgeous.
I think a lot of people don't really understand what that really means. And I think for you and I, we've discovered it, we've enjoyed it, and we're taking advantage of it. In North America, you know, I lived in Vancouver, my mother lived in Calgary. That would have been a 12 to 14 hour drive by car.
Right.
A little bit risky on the highways at night. But imagine if I could say to my mom, you know what, Mom, let's meet in between. I'll take an hour and a half, 2 hour high-speed rail. You take an hour and a half, 2 hours. Let's visit each other. that changes people's lives.
Yeah.
That changes people's life from a travel perspective, safety perspective. Also, that's how China is moving goods along. You know, this is the city, we call it, the nickname is 0 kilometer city because it's the starting point to the One Belt, One Road.
Right.
And as that connects this logistical lines, it branches out through the country. And you see small villages that were never connected to these grids, changing lives. These people come onto the trains, they sell their goods, their vegetables, they go down to another market. We recently interviewed certain farmers that were packaging their goods that used to take a long time to get to countries in Southeast Asia. Now they're either putting them on the train, the Highspeed Rail trains, or they're using the International Land Sea Trade Corridor, and these are amazing changes to people's lives here.
I think what's also amazing as well is it's not only from the personal perspective as far as the people of China, but it's also from the business perspective. Mm-hmm. And if you look at two examples, would be the city of Shanghai and also Suzhou. You've got two major cities, Shanghai obviously being one of the 4 top tier cities in China, but Suzhou is a very big tier 2 city. Massive. Now they're basically 30 minutes by high-speed rail. So that has really stimulated a tremendous amount of business between, and the other one would be Tianjin in the north, very close to Beijing. Very similar thing that you've seen. Basically, China will develop these 2 amazing cities, connect them by high-speed rail, and they're really feeding off each other, and business is flourishing between both of those cities and everywhere in between. So it's
interesting, right. We talk about the power of Shanghai. Even the port, just the port itself, ranks in, I think it's the top 20 economies for the amount of business that is run through that port. We're talking staggering numbers.
Right.
But, as China likes to do, it doesn't stop at its borders. It's trying to develop these relationships, and we've talked many times about the One Belt and One Road. And we're starting to see it play out on the geopolitical landscape right now.
We are.
If you look at the Americans, it was the first time I actually started to hear the One Belt, One Road start to hit the main headlines of Fox News.
Right.
Fox News would always use the term, Communist China is trying to influence this, Communist China is trying to influence that. They love the word. Communist, communist, communist. The first time I heard Maria Bartiromo say, well, the One Belt and One Road, and I thought, bang, as soon as they're starting to hear it now, we could feel that the impact is there. But you see, a lot of people have that vision of the One Belt, One Road as China in trying to impoverish other countries or debt trap other countries. We've talked about it.
I think what's amazing, Alex, is that over the last year, I've done several breakdowns of the Belt and Road. It's been something that I've been very fascinated about. And what I did is I would do a tremendous amount of research on one specific area. So I said, let's make a video about the Belt and Road in Africa. Let's make a video about it in South America, Southeast Asia, the Middle East. So you basically had these many regions that China would be targeting. And the reality is that when you talk about the West is the US, Canada, the European Union, Australia, and Japan. That's more or less the West and its allies. Now, if you look at the actual population, that's around 12% of the world's population. Yep. So you have about 88% of the world that lives outside of that. Many geopolitical people call that the global South. A better term would probably be the global majority, because again, it's 88%. And so what you're seeing is that this people that are in this 88%, they're very keen on China's Belt and Road Initiative. They're very keen on de-dollarization, which is a growing trend, moving away from the US dollar, influencing, or basically doing other currencies and really having that influence the market. So I think what is really amazing with this Belt and Road is just that China has grown a huge presence. I mean, it is the #1 trading partner for 120 countries around the world. I think it's important that people understand that, because, for the last 2 years, we've heard this incredible propaganda of we need to decouple from China. I call it propaganda because for any American to believe that it's possible to decouple from China is living in a fantasy world. Okay. It's even if it were something we could do, it's not. It's physically impossible, because we're so interconnected that decoupling from China would absolutely cripple the American economy. And people really need to understand that. And so I think there's always just trying to find a balance. What's so fun here is that when you come back here, you do feel that you are stepping very much in the future. I mean, I haven't used cash since I've been here, everything is really, actually, I don't take my wallet out when I'm in China. I just need my cell phone. Everything's super convenient, and it's getting better.
You know, recently I did a video in the Guangzhou Canton Fair. This, by size, is undoubtedly one of the largest trade fairs in the world.
By far.
I believe there's over 72,000 exhibitions going on at one time there. Well, I walked around and I looked at the product there and I looked at the sales. Now, I used to come into the show 20 years ago. Okay. And it used to be knickknacks, you know, little battery chargers, cheap headphones and stuff like that. And we started to really move up in the caliber of the items here. And I started to see a lot of collaborations with North American companies, working together with China, co-branding. Same with the new energy vehicle market.
Yeah.
This might cause an issue with the tariffs. Like, how do you decide a tariff when you have a collaboration between Mercedes-Benz and, let's say, BYD?
Right.
They work together maybe with Apple, using maybe some of the in-car entertainment system, and you have American tires on the car. Well, they're going to run into a few little problems to try to say, hey, we want to put tariffs on that if we're bringing them to the US. And the American suppliers that have the tires and the Europeans that maybe have the bumpers, they're going to say, wait a minute, no. We're in collaboration. And I think that's the smart move that China's done here.
Yeah.
And also, if you look back 20 years ago and you would go to the Canton Fair, like I said, there was a lot of, we'll call it cheap and cheerful items that would wind up under your Christmas tree. But what China has done here is it's raised its level of not only developing its infrastructure, but developing its products. And it has said to the American consumer, right, you have your dollar stores, you have your Walmarts, and then you have your higher end brands. Now, don't expect to have a beautiful glass that maybe crystal glass for 55 cents. Now, that consumer or that store, like maybe Walmart or whoever's still in business in the discount business, might sell that. Now, that gives an impression to the Americans that China makes cheap products.
Right.
But it's actually not China that wants to make these products. It's the buyers that come to these trade fairs. I did notice a lot of Russian buyers at trade fair this year in China. Massive amount, okay? And it looks like their market has been quickly replaced. But back to my point is, when you're looking at product that comes from China, you have to remember that it is the manufacturer that is based in China, but the buyer is from America, and the buyer is putting pressure on the manufacturer saying, okay, for example, we want a very cheap glass to sell our consumers. So can you make it for 50 cents? Now the Chinese supplier might say, well, we might be able to make it for $1. No, our price point is 50 cents, maybe 40 cents if we order minimum order quality 1,000. Now the Chinese are not going to turn down that order.
Right.
But they're going to take the specs and they're going to lower the specs to give the item to the buyer. And this is what happens. So we see our shelves in America, our shelves in Canada, riddled with all this stuff that might break or whatever. And people say, oh, yeah, it's made in China, it's cheap products. Well, not the case. I mean, China's got some great brands going now with DJI drone brands, Huawei mobile phones.
Totally.
I mean, you know some other brands here in China.
Well, I think what everybody needs to understand about China is, and the reason I want to go back to the main point where I brought up earlier, is the fact that it's impossible for the United States and China to decouple. Okay, it's not possible because, you know, what I always tell people when in America, when they say that, they say, you know, we should be manufacturing in America. I said, hey, no problem. Let's go ahead and build an Apple factory here. Let's go ahead and employ that with Americans. And I just hope you're willing to pay $6,000 for an iPhone, because that's probably the price point that's going to have to happen for you to, you know, be able to manufacture an iPhone in America and pay an American salary for the workers and be able to do that. The interesting thing about this is, you know, Tim Cook, he actually had a brilliant quote about this. He said, the reason that we go to China is not because of the cheap manufacturing. Yes, it is a cost advantage of us to be in China. The interesting thing, though, is the tooling, the actual tooling that requires, the engineering and the tooling. He said, if I'm in America, that is very hard to fill a single room with the engineers that have that ability to do that. But if I'm in China, I can fill multiple football fields with engineers that know how to do that tooling process. So this is exactly what I think we're talking about, Alex, is this shift that we've seen. You're definitely right. in the 1970s and 80s, let's call a spade a spade. China produced a lot of cheap stuff that did not have a lot of good quality. And I think what I want people to understand, and this is what piggybacks what you said, is that it comes from the buyer, is that China is able to produce whatever you want at whatever price point you want. So if you want it as cheap as possible, China can make it. It's not going to be good, but they can make it for you.
Yeah.
But what China has really been focusing on is more the high-end manufacturing. So if you have a budget and you really want high-end manufacturing, you can also get that done in China. And that's something where the industry has shifted a lot.
And it's not necessarily about price points anymore. Some goods are expensive to produce here in China.
Right.
Not everything is cheap anymore. But then it comes down to, as you say, the engineering, the people that can be reliable, the manufacturing warehouses that have the logistical lines to get these products to market. You know, if we look at the American automotive industry, it's not necessarily a manufacturing plant that you have in, states like Detroit. These are assembly plants. And these assembly plants are, I'll call them Lego facilities, where they are built block by block by block. And a lot of these products are coming from other parts of the world here. And yes, of course, maybe some brake pads come from China, and some doors come from China, and bumpers come from China. But they're all put together. And that's why if you want to cut off China, well, get ready for a very expensive shift in what people take for granted. No, can you name me one U.S. television manufacturer?
I can't. And and the thing that's amazing about this, Alex, and kind of what I have some hope for this, is that there's a big disconnect in America, because when you talk to the businessmen, you talk to the people that really understand the world economy, they understand how the world works, they get that. And that's what I'm encouraged. So how important is it? It's everything. So it's a fascinating thing when you start looking at what our politicians say. And again, politicians will say anything to get a vote, to install fear. Don't forget, fear is a very valuable tactic. I mean, I'm here as an American in China. State Department of America, travel advisor warning, American citizens do not travel to China because of your safety.
Incredible.
It's just unbelievable how safe it is here compared to my home country. That's just the reality. The reality is that you look at the crime rates, look at what you're seeing here, and it is a much different society. But I wanted to just make that point, because I am encouraged, because every single business person that I get that really understands the world and how it works, they understand how important China is.
Yeah.
And they have a much more objective view than what's presented in our media.
And there's a lot of America outside of America that is in China. If you walk in some of these shopping malls or visit a lot of these restaurants, there's many Starbucks here, there's many apparel stores that are selling as well. Sam's Club is in town, it's a major player as well. And we're seeing more influence from America here. Now, I'm not witnessing people saying, get these American stores out of here. In fact, there's a lot of trust for American brands here. And as well as American car brands. A lot of people think that Tesla couldn't do well in China. Well, they're selling lots of cars here, okay? Yeah. Do I think Tesla is the best new energy vehicle on the market? I've been privy to see inside some of these beautiful cars. I have to tell you, BYD, it's called Beyond Your Dreams, is an amazing automobile. They're a company that continues to strive forward and try to innovate. They are coming out with just some staggeringly beautiful cars on the market right now.
They are incredible. The cars are very incredible. When you come here, one of the biggest differences that I've seen, and really just in the last year alone, Alex, is just the fact with these EV cars is now we're at a point where more than 50% of the cars on the road are EVs.
Yeah, sure.
And it's consistent across the board. And
you can see the air quality. I mean, yeah, of course, there's factories that are still giving off some emissions that are not good.
Right.
The government's working with companies to try to reduce that. I mean, you can't just shut a country of 1.5 billion down, its entire manufacturing. It is the warehouse of the world, this country. You can't just shut it down overnight. But we are seeing a decrease each year. The emissions are going down. The EV car market, I told you earlier today when we had a nice walk and talk that, it's not being pushed on people and say, hey, we're going to completely knock out the petrol cars and we're going 100 EV because Greta Thunberg said so. It's no, because we think there's affordability for the consumer. Would you like 80% more money in your pocket from not paying for fuel and driving an EV car that is reliable? Yeah, of course. I've seen it. I've been taking these cars for 4 years around this city. I haven't seen any start on fire. I'm sure there's some problems, but I haven't seen, cars burning up and freezing up and seizing up like the headlines in America. I'm sure there's issues, but once again, it's a country that is trying to make things better for the people. It's trying to bring affordable ways of transportation.
Yeah, the reason for that is really the government. The government really made that a priority. And once the government makes it a priority, it gets done.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the strategic advantages of China's government. It's made a noticeable difference in the quality of lives of people in the sense that they can have reliable cars at an affordable price, but it's also helped with the environment. I don't know how many major bridges you're going to walk across in a major city with traffic flying by you and not having, there's not much exhaust fumes and things like that. It was very pleasurable for us to walk across the bridge today. And again, just a beautiful view of the city.
Yeah.
I mean, that is spectacular. I've never seen anything like it.
So what's in store for Cyrus Jansen, the second part here of 2024? What are you going to be up to in the next 6 months?
Great question. So everybody, we're going to continue to be putting out videos on our channel. I do have a couple of upcoming trips. I think one I'm very excited for. I'm going to be going to Malaysia in September. I'm going to be speaking at a very big conference there about geopolitics around the world. Very honored to be invited to speak at that conference. But what I'm also excited for is to really make some vlogs in Malaysia as well, because Malaysia, a key member of that Belt and Road Initiative, also a very big ally to China, and they built an amazing railway system right through Kuala Lumpur that was built by China. So I'm gonna go on that rail. I'm gonna make a video on that rail, showcasing what China has built and how this Belt and Road Initiative works.
And I guess near the end of 2024, we have a major election happening in November in the United States. This is a key election. I think this is one of the most important elections probably in the last maybe 20, 30 years to be taking place in the United States of America. I think that will definitely gear up a lot of our geopolitical live streams. I look forward to those and getting into those with you, making some maybe wild predictions of what we think the outcome is going to be. I had a question the other day that was quite interesting. They asked me, they said, okay, Alex, we know who the presidential candidates is. That's one thing. But who are the VP picks? And this could be very important.
I think so. And I think with the U.S. political race, it's going to be a very close election. We can't forget that Donald Trump actually ran a very good campaign in 2020. He got 70 million votes in America. And I think there's a lot of, I feel there's a lot of momentum going towards Trump at the moment. I think that a lot of Americans are very frustrated with Biden, and we'll see what that results. I think that the age is certainly becoming a big issue, and that could be a consideration. Although Donald Trump's only 2 years younger, so it's not like Donald Trump's a spring chicken either. He's 78 years old himself, and I for one, as a U.S. citizen, would love to see term limits and. Well, not term limits, but age limits specifically.
And I think it's going to be some pretty tough territory here for the Chinese to really understand how to deal with this in November. These are two candidates that I feel there's, they're making China's a bad guy again going into this election. And is China bad? China bad. It's Putin bad. It's Russia bad. Dictator Putin. They're using all these things against these nations. It's going to be an interesting last quarter for us to follow.
It will be. That's what we do, though. We follow the geopolitics, and I think it's going to be very interesting because, what's really been sad about the Biden administration is that Donald Trump introduced the trade war with China, and Biden has doubled down and made it much worse. The one bad thing about a democracy, and I'm not anti-democratic and I'm not anti-democracy, but unfortunately, so much of it has become popularity contest. It's become control the narrative. It has become, how can we influence your vote? And unfortunately, China is the biggest way to do that. China is the biggest threat to America. We need to do something about it. Let's pass more, military spending. Let's sanction, EV cars. Biden wants to introduce a 100% tariff, which he's done now, and that now means that affordable car is not available to American consumers. And it really is. It's a loss for the U.S. consumer, but it basically just sends a signal. We can't compete with you, so we're going to block you.
Yeah. I also just going to end it off by saying, I learned a lot in 2016 when Trump came into the office, and I thought, wow, this is not really a politician. This is a businessman. People know that this is Trump. This is Trump style. Do a deal. I went in. I negotiated hard. We got this, and we gave them that, but we still got this. But I noticed that, even if he had control of the Senate and control of the House, he still couldn't get much done. It also exposed that, there's Donald Trump, and then there's the Republican Party, and then there's people in that Republican Party that are not necessarily with Donald Trump, more neocons. And you have this tug of war, and it's very complicated to do anything as a president of the United States now. Even if you have the Senate in control, the House in control, and then you also got to be very careful on, and I think this is something maybe Trump has learned this time, not to trust everybody. He really had some terrible advice going into the pandemic, which I think also possibly could have cost him the election at one point if he would have maybe handled it a little bit different.
Right.
So, lots to cover here in the remainder of 2024. I look forward to doing many live streams with Cyrus Jansen. Cyrus Jansen's channel can be found, of course, very easily by visiting the link in the description below. Look for us more for our live streams.
So, Alex, thank you so much.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on to visit me.
Always a pleasure.
All right, guys. Take care. Thanks for watching. You know what to do. Subscribe. Bye-bye.
Take care.